And welcome to the March 16th, 2021 Select Board meeting. And Bill, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. Can we have a motion on the minutes of March 2nd?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Gardner. Is there a second?
Second.
Maureen, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. At this time, if there's anybody in the audience with new public business that's not on the agenda, now's the time to speak. Hearing none, we'll move right to number 3. A public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the General Laws on the application of the Polish, Russian, Lithuanian American Citizens Club, 12 Cheever Street, Brittany Sparkus Chapman, manager, for a change of manager at that location. Is there somebody to speak to this?
Yes.
Approach the microphone. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Eugene Richard, attorney for the applicant, Polish, Russian, Lithuanian American Citizens Club. With me is Brittany Sparkus Chapman, the proposed manager. Ms. Sparkus Chapman has been working as a manager at the Polish Club for approximately 6 years. As a manager, she is tips trained, familiar with the sale and service of alcoholic beverages, and I just said she's tips trained, and we would ask that she be approved as manager. I would add that the Polish Club has been closed for pretty much the past year, but temporarily because of COVID. They're hoping to reopen soon and then get back to full services soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Brittany, you want to say anything?
The only thing I can speak to is my professionalism. I've been, as he previously stated, I've been with the club for numerous years. I've been a member of the club since I turned 21. I've been involved in the club, not only just working there, but for numerous events for the club for its members and supporting, keeping it going for the future. And I look forward to continuing that.
Thank you. Bill?
I've only got one question. Is the police department going to have unfettered access to your facility for enforcement of alcoholic beverage laws?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is the police department going to have unfettered access to your facility for the enforcement of alcoholic beverage laws? In other words, do they have to, can they go right into this facility? Is the problem in the past they were not able to?
Anytime that I have been a manager there, and there was any issues regarding the police, they have had accessibility. And anytime I've reached out to them for any needs, I've had their support.
But will they have access unfettered to the facility?
To my understanding, yes.
And I would say, as their attorney, this subject hasn't come up, but I will certainly counsel them that should be the case.
It came up several years ago before this board when they made the statement that was true that there were no incidents of non-compliance with the facility. But at the time, the police did not have unfettered access to the facility.
Thank you, Bill. David?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Maureen?
No questions. Good luck. Thank you.
Gardner?
Hi, a couple of questions. For disclosure, I'm a member, have been for many, many years. And to Bill's point, yes, there had been a concern previously that social organizations that have a key card that require access and have to buzz people into those locations if they're not a member and have a key card were dealt with in our liquor license guidelines. And both the Polish Club and the Knights of Columbus sent information back to the board that at that time satisfied the concern that, yes, you're right, a police officer can't walk up to the door and open it up like it's a bar because it's a different kind of organization. So I was concerned about that previously. I'm satisfied that the actions the board took regarding that were sufficient, and that's about the club, different than the applicant. I do have a question about the applicant. Have you been working as a paid manager at the club?
For the whole 6 years that I've been there, or during a pandemic?
If you want to say during the, if you want, did Laura Wolf leave?
Laura Wolf is no longer part of our
Okay.
facility. That is correct.
So
During the time, to answer your question, I was paid up until a pandemic where I was then put on furlough. And
Okay.
I have not been paid during this pandemic.
Okay, which is different than your election as president. And I just want to make sure, I want to understand the distinction about the role. Is it, you've been there, and I appreciate you've been there as president as long as you have.
To clarify, no, I am not an elected person.
Okay,
I was a hired employee, and I was hired underneath Laura, who was the previous general manager, also under the guidance of the board at that time.
very good. Now I notice your tip certification
Correct.
was issued on 3/7. Were you tip certified prior to 3/7?
Yes,
Okay, I just see, I only have.
that's just an updated one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep, I attended bartending school when I was at the age of 18, where I first retained my first tip certification in the state of Massachusetts, and have continued that through my employment
Okay.
with the Polish Club.
Then I won't ask you how many years, because I don't want you to tip your hand on how old you are.
Well, I can answer that too. I know my date of birth and
Okay.
how old I am.
No, I meant, how many years have you been tip certified?
Since I was 18 years old, and I'm 30, so the math is 12.
All right, thank you. This is the same question I ask of every applicant, please don't think I'm. And I see that you're planning on working there 40-plus hours, and I know you're there a considerable amount of time.
Correct.
All right, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gardner. A question for the attorney, Richards. Are you familiar with the building?
I am not.
So, and I'm going to just briefly describe it so you get a sense. There's 3 function rooms, 3 hallways, an office, a couple of supply closets, 2 kitchens, the main bar, and a card room. So it's a big building. Brittany's going to be there 40 hours on the premise, as it says here, but whereabouts on the premise? How many hours on the floor versus the office?
I can speak to that.
All right, Brittany could speak to that. Let me just say on the hours, I don't want to repeat myself, but because the club is currently not open for business, for her operations, and the plan is to open it sort of a soft opening as the conditions warrant, probably over the next couple of months into the fall. So the 40 hours will be once the club is up and operating as
Thank you, I
previously
appreciate
normal.
that, yep. If
Okay.
they only open 16, she can't be there 40 hours, I get that.
So during a 40-hour work week, what that would look like for me, being at the club, there are things that I will be doing in the office, you are correct, whether that's scheduling bartenders, ordering linen for our functions. So that would be part of my time. Secondly, a big part of the role is a functions manager is being there when there are functions, being there to support my guests that are there, and secondly, being able to support our team of bartenders and making sure that they are successful in what they need, as well as if there's an outside catering company or anyone needs a facility of those. So I am on the floor during a function, and when we don't have a function, I am on the facility maintaining those functions, booking the functions for the club on their behalf.
Very good, thank you. Well said. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to comment? Thank you. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matthew Duggan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Before I make some comments, I'm just curious as to what happened to the current manager of record, who I believe is Laura Wolf.
I don't think that's any interest
That's
of this
not
board.
relevant here?
It's no interest of this board.
All right. Well, I rise in opposition to this application. I don't believe that the background of this proposed manager, what you've heard over the past few minutes, the background or the experience is, it sounds like an embellishment to me based on my understanding. And in addition, several residents or several members of the club have reached out to me, and they've expressed concern for the fitness of character for this proposed manager. And I'm sure the board is aware that the ABCC looks at that attribute very closely when they approve this type of appointment. So again, I oppose this application, and I don't think you're being provided with the complete information about what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
Hi, I'm Andrea Walk, and I'm a member of the club. I'm an ethnic member. I've been a member for approximately 6 years also, like Brittany. I do know that she was a semi-assistant manager. I believe she worked 1 day a week, if that. She was in the office the majority of the time. I think I never really saw her out on the floor, but just given the information, and I agree with Matt, she might sound like she has her credentials, but this is a big club, and I know the ABC very well. I worked in the beverage industry for many years. It's very serious, and when this gentleman here brings up the fact that the police could show up, or there could be patrons that are drinking too much, situations, we really need someone in the club like the former manager that had 40 years experience that can handle people that are actual members of the club. So I oppose, like Matt's saying, I just don't think that her experience is strong enough to be at the club. We had a strong general manager. I know this isn't the space for it. I don't know why she was terminated. So bringing this up is very disheartening to a lot of people also, but her experience, that's why some of the club members are here. I think they're using the pandemic as an excuse to put somebody new in the place, and unfortunately this person is not qualified. If they can find someone that's qualified, then I would be for it. But right now, given the situation and some of the qualifications that she brought forward, I don't really care that she's tip certified. How many bars and restaurants has she managed outside of the Polish Club that is at this type of capacity, like you said, with all these rooms, the functions, the bar, and be able to handle all these people? Thank you very much.
So if I may, the other members of the club that are out there in the audience, do you concur with Andrea? Show of hands. Thank you.
We didn't have time to put together a petition, but there's a lot more members too.
So,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
You may.
if I could ask a pointed question. I appreciate you answering how long you got your tip certification. What is your work experience as a bartender outside the Polish Club? What is your work experience in the Polish Club as a bartender versus the manager in the hall, but actually serving and in some cases not serving people?
Sure. So when I came into the Polish Club and I was trained under Laura, she also had me train under bartenders so that if there was a need for me to come behind the bar, help make drinks, help get them ice, ring the registers, whatever the bartender's assistants needed, I was able to do that for them. And then also professionally, for the last 4 years, I've worked in hospitality as an events manager, also doing the same things for my bartenders at their events and selling events as well.
Okay, so maybe my question got lost. What is your experience as the bartender of record, the bartender who is serving and making decisions about serving as opposed to getting ice, ringing cash registers? How many years have you served the patrons directly as the bartender?
There has been functions while I've been at the Polish Club, I can't tell you how many in the last 6 years, that I've been able to go behind the bar and assist and make a drink or do those numerous other things that I have stated to you. Whether it's getting somebody a beer, I'm able to make a cocktail, I've done that. Have I worked at another bar previously and been a bartender? No, I have not.
Okay, so my concern is assistant to a lead bartender, someone who's tip certified, trained, does this is a person who experiences and has the work experience to do this is different than supporting. For example, I am certain that if the bartender was on and you offered to serve someone who was inebriated, they would stop that. You would follow their leads.
I would also do that myself, and I have been there
Well,
in
and
cases.
so I'm trying to ascertain, based on the comments that I've heard,
Yes.
how much time you have yourself been the deciding factor as the lead bartender. And I heard the answer to my first question, which was prior to the Polish Club, not. And that's okay. That's the answer. But at the Polish Club, I'm looking, is it 100 functions? Is it 500 functions over 6 years? Is it 20 functions? I am trying to get a sense of how many
I've been on
times, how many
premises for
times, trying to get a
hundreds.
sense of
I
how
would
many
say-
I'm trying to finish my question. I'm trying to get a sense of how many times you have been the sole bartender at the bar.
I would say I was never a sole bartender for like even an entire shift. I've been there maybe if somebody was running late or something of that nature, to be honest with you, and needed to be the bartender on in that moment. Or if there was a bartender, I was a secondary because they needed those hands. So there have been those cases. I cannot tell you how many times that has been. It could have been 10 times. I would love to answer you honestly, but I don't have a specific number for you.
Okay.
But I have been there for instances when bartenders need the guidance to know when to ID or they're hesitant. I'm able to step in and help them because of my TIPS certification and being their manager. I'm able to guide them in those needs. And that's all I have to say to answer your question at this time.
All set, Gardner?
One last question. When did Laura Wolf leave the employee of the Polish Club?
I don't have that answer specifically.
6 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago?
I can answer that. Laura Wolf had an employment agreement that terminated at the end of December of last year.
Okay.
I don't know if it was December 31st, but it was toward the end of December. She continued at will until recently.
So what I'm hearing then is Laura Wolf, the manager of record who had this experience, was the manager of record up until about 3 months ago, or she still is, but that's why we're here. But she was actively involved, and of course, with it being closed, that's fine. You don't have any experience being a manager of the bar where it's your responsibility to make sure all the ABCC guidelines and our town guidelines are followed.
I don't know that I was hearing that. I was hearing questions about, has she poured drinks?
Has she been the lead bartender? And has she, and being at the bar, being a member of the club for 6 years and working to help for 6 years, certainly good, but that doesn't give you the experience of being a manager or being the lead bartender when she herself said she's never served a shift as a bartender. And
Well-
and Laura's only been gone for 3 months, so there's been no opportunity for her to exercise and gain experience as a manager of record for the license. So Danvers takes this stuff very seriously. We have had problems in the past with other, not with the Polish Club.
Excuse me, Gardner, let's stick to the Polish Club. And if you don't mind, I'd like to see if the Vice President would like to speak.
Sure.
John, would like to say some words in favor or against? You're the Vice President?
I'm the Vice President.
Thank you, John.
I'm the Vice President and acting President right now.
Right, yeah, the chief bottle washer. Would you care to go to the microphone to speak to this application? Or not? Your choice.
I don't understand what he's asking.
He's asking you to make a statement as to whether you support or oppose this.
Please introduce yourself.
John Swaniarski. I'm the Vice President and the acting President right now because we don't have a president. Brittany is a very responsible person. She's been with the Polish Club for 6 years, even more. She's very reliable. I don't see any question why we should not have her as the manager.
Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone else in the public with a comment?
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we do not accept the application based on lack of direct experience in the role.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Gardner, you can just repeat why.
Like I said, I know Brittany, and I know she's there and does a lot of good work for the club, and I appreciate that she is. I just don't think the level of responsibility for a manager of a liquor license has met a threshold based on her experience. This is not a learn-as-you-go job. A single issue or a single misstep can cost someone their lives, potentially. And it is a social club. It's a fun club. I go down there myself. I have beers, I have drinks. And it's a little bit different than a commercial bar where it's easy to say no to people that you don't see every single day or every week. And so I just, this is not a matter of her not a matter of her being reliable or hardworking or any of that nature. It's a matter of experience. And I don't think they've demonstrated enough experience to take this role on where I'm comfortable as the licensing authority to say, yes, I support this.
Thank you. Anyone else make a comment? We have a motion. There's been a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Sorry. The application is denied.
Thank you.
The board will review the procedures and timeline for appointment of a tenant member to the Danvers Housing Authority Board. Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You received in your packets for the meeting tonight a memorandum from Town Clerk Kathy Ellsworth, along with some supporting documentation. After years of waiting, the state did issue guidance in January of this year related to the appointment of the fifth member of the Danvers Housing Authority. And I think rather than repeat what's here, the summary, the bottom line up front is that by June of this year, this board will be asked to appoint a tenant member after a process is followed whereby tenants who are interested in filling that seat can submit paperwork to Ms. Ellsworth and then appear before this board to introduce themselves. And Mr. Eisenhower, who has been filling that seat on a one-year basis for the past 3 years, his term will expire once the new member is appointed. So if you have questions, we could try to answer those. Kathy's been very close to this, and I'm sure could probably answer in better detail than I could. But that's what is before you tonight.
David, any questions?
As I understand it, there will be a search made among tenants to see if somebody would like to be willing to undertake this, and then application and qualifications will be requested and then reviewed. And if nobody applies and nobody wants the job, well, that's the next step that we don't have to worry about tonight. Does that sound about right?
Thank you, yes. Bill?
Okay, no questions, thank you.
Gardner?
I have no questions, thank you.
Noreen?
No questions?
Neither do I. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you. So we'll work with Cindy Dunn, and this opportunity will be advertised and distributed among all of the qualified tenants. And we'll be collecting forms late spring and bringing candidates before you when we have, once the deadline to submit has passed. Thank you.
Number 5, discussion of a policy for naming rights of town-owned properties. Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you tonight is an updated version of the policy that was circulated prior to the last meeting. Town Council has reviewed this policy, and you'll note there's a small footnote at the bottom of page 3 now, which reminds the board of some of the gift accepting policies spelled out in the state ethics law. There are still typos. As I was reading it this afternoon, I was finding grammatical things that we need to tweak in here. But simply put, this is a policy that would lay out for interested residents the process by which town-owned buildings, monuments, areas under the jurisdiction of the town and not the schools could be named in memory or recognition of somebody who made a great contribution to the town in some way, shape, or form. So there's a form attached that we're still tinkering with a little bit, but this is essentially codifying some of the processes that we've been discussing this past year. We have several residents who have contacted us either at these meetings or via email or phone with ideas that they wanted to talk about. So this will put a process in place for them.
Thank you. Questions, Maureen?
No questions?
Comment? Any comments?
No, I just think it's great. It's nice to see a policy in place, because a lot of people have asked about, what do they do? So I like, very good work, Steve, and your group. Thank you.
Bill?
No questions, thank you.
David?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, paragraph 3 on page 2, I have read 4 or 5 times, and for the life of me, I don't know what it means. And if everybody else does know, then I have no objection. But if somebody could explain it to me, that would be welcome.
Well, it says that the board will review existing facility names to avoid duplication or inappropriateness.
No, Dan, it's on the second page.
Oh,
at
well,
the-
there's 2 number 3s, excuse me.
Yeah,
At the top of the page,
yes, please.
the donor petitions the town of Danvers for removal of naming right provided that the donation has been paid in full. It is a little confusing, Mr. Town Manager.
It's hard to give a good example. I guess the best example would be if an entity were using like the high school fields project, for example. There were several naming rights opportunities with respect to that. And if a commitment is made by a donor to the town to make a series of payments in exchange for the naming rights for something that's been approved, if in year 3 of 5 or 4 of 10 they attempted to exit that agreement, to take my name down, I'm not paying you anymore, I'm going to get stuck there because as I think that through, there would be an agreement in place, so it would go back to the agreement, not necessarily the policy with respect to that. So this is a section I don't have a great answer on.
When I read it, the first example I turned to was Acme Company donated to name the sports box at the new field. Acme Company is now no longer in business or is bought out by XYZ Corporation, and they want to change it. Continue on with the policy, but I'm no longer the Boston Garden, the TD Garden, is the way I perceive this. So the original name on there would be defunct. That company doesn't exist anymore, or it was bought up by another company, or I was looking at it that way. As opposed to you named a bench after me and I decided I don't want that bench named after me anymore.
So in the criteria section, it says that the board reserves the right to rescind naming rights based in whole or in part on the following criteria. So the board may rescind naming rights if I would assume a new donor petitions the town for the removal of a naming right, provided that the prior donation has been paid in full, is non-refundable, and that the petitioner, I guess the new petitioner is a legal name. But we don't have, if there's a question here, let me circle it and discuss that with Dave DeLuca to make sure that we fully understand what that is saying.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this, David?
The last page, Mr. Chairman, I see an email going to Ann Frieders. Well, I hope Ann works for the town long after I'm gone, but I don't know if we want to identify a particular person for, it could be, you know, whether it be to the office of town manager rather than to Ann, although Ann would certainly be the right person under today's organization.
Perhaps a more generic email address, Mr. Manager?
Ann was the last person to put eyes on this document, but I will discuss this with her tomorrow to make sure that
Good
she's
luck.
comfortable. She did not protest, but I will double check.
She would probably not want responsibility.
She likes to know what's going on.
Good point. Any other comments?
The other note, Mr. Chairman, on the form,
Yep.
number 3 there, it says within and then period of time. So that's an open question. I don't think we need to commit to a time frame because each request may be unique. So we may do some wordsmithing with respect to the form to make it clear. The
Within a
intent is
reasonable time or something.
when a
You
request
can't-
comes in, there may be a circumstance where this board wants some diligence to be done, and that should take whatever time is necessary to complete.
Fine. All right, it's a little cleaning to do before you can.
Yeah, so we have had several residents ask us, inquire about this. So I think what I would suggest is we can share the draft version so they have a general understanding, and we will button up some loose ends and provide a final version for the board.
Would it be appropriate for this board to approve it as a first reading to be corrected?
I think that's fair.
So, members, he's going to go back and fix it, but do you want to approve it on a first reading?
So moved. Second. So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Town manager report to the board on various items of interest. We're moving right along. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with the airport memo that was provided to the board on Friday. And per my email yesterday, there is a second version which I handed out this evening. They are largely the same, with the exception, as noted in the email, some changes that were requested for discussion purposes by Select Board Member Trask in section 2AI, 2A1, and 2D1. So before the board gets into the discussion of the specifics, just as a reminder, we were joined at our last meeting by a consultant and the executive director of the Beverly Airport. They made a presentation to this board on the ongoing master planning process. The board then heard from a dozen or so residents expressing various concerns about the airport, some having to do with the master plan process, much more having to do with operations with respect to noise and touch and go, et cetera. And the intent of the meeting was for the board to hear both the update and from residents and offer some feedback directly to the Airport Commission to be part of the record for the master planning process. The attempt that Mr. Henry and I made in this memorandum when we drafted it was to sort of separate out board comments related to the master planning process versus comments related to operations. So the first page summarizes the comments that we heard with respect to the planning process itself, and the second section is an attempt to capture what we heard the board say with respect to noise and operations. So with that, I think the purpose tonight is to see what changes, if any, the board would like to make to this, and then Mr. Henry will deliver this to the airport on behalf of this board.
So Gardner, you requested the change. You want to explain it?
Sure.
There were things that were identified in section D, which are not the responsibility or purview of the airport. It discussed limiting certain flights, touch and goes, certain times, and those are actually, many of those were not at the purview of the airport commission, but of the FAA. So we've changed it to say, understand what the FAA will allow, has defined, publish it, and what the opportunities for revision to it are. So I wanted to make sure it was clear that we're not asking the airport commission to do something they actually don't have the ability to do outside FAA guidelines and approvals.
Gardner, question.
Yeah.
We get these guidelines. Can we request more specific prohibitions beyond what FAA says?
You can petition them.
Them.
You can petition the FAA. The Beverly Airport does not have the right to say a plane can't land. It can't land at night. The analogy is there's a federal highway system, Route 1. And while we could ask for the police department to stop tractor-trailer traffic between 1 and 4 in the morning, we could ask for that, but we don't have the authority individually to enforce that.
So, and I agree, clarifying the rules and regulations makes a lot of sense. I'm just disappointed that we can't tell the citizens that we can give them some relief specifically.
Yeah, they talked about touch and goes not being allowed on certain days. Unfortunately, the Beverly Airport does have a flight school that does touch and goes as part of the training, FAA training, but it is also a Class A airport closest to Logan Airport. You have to do touch and goes in your training in different classification airports. Beverly is the closest municipal airport to a Class A function, because you'd never be allowed to do a touch and go at Logan. And so there is a lot of traffic, and we saw the number last week, or 2 weeks ago. There are only 105 fixed aircraft at Beverly, registered and with tie-downs or hangars. There were 64,000 events. An event is you take off or you land, or in the case of a touch and go, that's 2 events, because you landed and you took off. It is overwhelmingly transient aircraft not associated with Beverly Airport itself that do these things. And while I agree that it sounds good, if you can't actually do it, if Beverly Airport can't do it on its own without petitioning the FAA, I didn't want to put specifics in there and offer false hope, knowing that there's another step in the process. BVY cannot make that decision. They have to go to the FAA.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, David?
Only that I like Gardner's explanation to me is very clear and understandable. And I hope that the good neighbors can also understand what has been said, because I, of course, want the citizens to know that we will do anything in our power to mitigate the inconvenience they have of these planes buzzing over. But also, I understand Gardner's excellent explanation, and thank you for the work that you put into it, Gardner, actually.
Bill?
No questions.
Maureen?
Gardner, yeah, thank you for explaining that. But so the revised one that we got, like the first one we got, I mean, naturally we want to help our citizens. And when on D, the touch and go operations, you know, are we saying that there's not going to be any timeframes, like on number 2, prohibit operations 9 a.m. and after 1 p.m. on Sundays between July 1st and August 31st? Can't we put like no Sundays at all? I mean,
No, we can't. The short answer is no.
The short answer is no?
The short answer is the person who can authorize that is the FAA. They're the only person who can restrict use of a federally funded system. So Beverly can't say tomorrow, we say no. And there's 2 levels of this. They can recommend. They can say to pilots, we recommend you don't do this, but pilots don't have to conform. But in order to say no with any clarity and official status, it has to come from the FAA.
So how can the citizens, can they go to the FAA?
Sure they can. So the revision is,
Okay.
let's get and publish what the FAA allows, what it doesn't allow,
Okay.
and the opportunity for petition.
Right.
So
the-
that's what the new gray
That's what I
area is.
thought, okay, that's what I was thinking, okay. Because like, I understand it's everything comes down to the FAA, but being partly in our town, don't we have control over the noise? I mean,
So if you go back to my analogy, we've got Route 1, 128, and 95.
yeah,
If loud trucks go down that, we can't prohibit that. It's the federal highway system, and state police have measurements maybe, but
so,
unless
so we can put measurements in?
no,
No.
I'm saying no. We can't ask Beverly Airport, they themselves cannot say, you may not fly and land here on these dates, on this time, without going to the FAA and petitioning the FAA and have the FAA say, this is the new rule for Beverly Airport. It's been done. There have been restrictions in other airports, happens all the time in Logan, about flight paths and other issues, but putting that there, we're asking for something that's not achievable without going to the FAA. So let's let the citizens know what the FAA does and doesn't allow and what the petition process is. And the petition process would start by going to BVY, the Beverly Commission, say, hey, we want you to petition for no touch and goes between this date and that date.
So the citizens could do that?
They
by
could do
petition?
that, but the authority is the FAA.
Okay, so just to make it clear for the citizens, that they would go through Aaron,
They would go through,
Matthew?
they could go through Aaron and Matthew to
Okay.
bring their concerns to the Beverly Airport Commission meetings. They themselves could go to the airport commission meetings and to make the same statement directly without going through
and
those
we as
two.
board members could participate in that too?
Sure, it's an
Okay.
open public meeting.
All right,
Yep. So this is just to say, let's clearly define the rights of the Beverly Airport to affect action versus the FAA.
Are you all set, Maureen?
yes,
You
I am,
understand?
yes, I
Okay.
understand, yep.
Other board members okay?
I do have a couple of additions I'd like to suggest for the board's consideration. We heard the people who joined us the other day, quite a bit of them actually, more than I've seen for a long time. I would like to ask for a recommendation to be added to this to provide for quarterly workshops by the BVY with all commissioners for the citizens, for a community workshop. Just like our meetings here, we allow new business, but we don't particularly act on it because it's new to us. I'm suggesting that if you go to the commission meetings, it's the same dynamic. When we have a large issue, we do a community workshop whose focus is that thing. So if the neighbors are feeling that they're not being heard, then let's ask them to have a quarterly or every 4 or 6 months, a workshop specifically to sit down and talk about neighbors' concerns.
What else did you want to add?
And we have to lead by example. One of the things we did ask in here was for them to start publishing information on their website, more data points, documentation. This is probably not something we need to put in here, but we have to update our own website. You can do links to their minutes, but the last minutes we have on there is from 2017, and we don't have Matthew Mosier's name on there or contact information and references to very old committee members. So outside of this, I'd like to ask that you have that updated.
I won't put that in here, but we'll take care of that.
Thank you. That's it?
That's it. The board want to approve this to send on to the Beverly Commission as amended by Selectman Trask?
Does that require a motion?
Well,
If it does, Dan, I make
I think we should take a vote on it to forward it to the synopsis of our remarks.
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Thank you. So Steve, you'll have this sent along
Yes.
with those
Take care of that. Thank you.
changes. Thank you. Anything else, Steve?
Just a brief item, and we spoke about this on Saturday, and I don't have more information today than I did Saturday, but I did provide the copy in your packets of the MMA's summary of ARPA, the relief program that was passed in Congress a couple weeks ago. And as we discussed, we're awaiting guidance, I think, from both the Department of Treasury and the state in terms of how these funds will be allocated and what uses are permitted. So there'll be a lot more to follow once we start getting some details. But I provided that, and I think there's probably more information going up on the MMA website any day. So that's really it. The last item is that I provided a copy of some general correspondence that we received from Comcast. The cable committee is starting the process to renew its agreement with Comcast. I want to say 2 years ago, we reviewed and updated our agreement with Verizon. We'll be using the services of an attorney at KP Law who specializes in these cable contract renewals. And so we'll be reporting back with more information on that in future meetings.
Question?
Yes?
A couple of years ago, we talked about the fact that the two cable companies that service us the most are on different cycles of contracts. Is that still the case, and can we work to align them so they can't play games about, oh, you gave this to them last year when this year situations may change?
Yes, that remains the goal. So historically, I believe we've done 10-year contracts, and they have been off cycle with one another. The standard, as we learned a couple years ago, is that none of the telecoms are doing 10-year contracts anymore because of the rapidly changing nature of the industry. So the goal with Comcast will be to do a shorter-term agreement to make it consistent with Verizon.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Motion on the consent calendar, please.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. Maureen, any new business or updates?
Let's see. No, it's nice to see that we will be hopefully appointing a tenant on the Danvers Housing Authority. I'm on that committee. I speak with Cindy Dunn. Matter of fact, we'll have a meeting Thursday. The rail trail seems to have a little bit of a problem right now, so we'll be looking to get some work done on that. Other than that, everything else is good.
Thank you. Bill?
I just want to recognize the fact that we lost how many we remember Bob Ryan from Precinct 7. And we just like to let people know that it happened, and Bob's seat is available.
I'm sorry, Bill, who was that?
Bob Ryan,
Oh, yes.
from Glendale Drive.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Anything else?
No.
David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the cable television question, especially the realignment of the two principal contracts, the Cable Commission will be meeting this coming Thursday at 5 o'clock. Everybody's welcome. I'm pretty sure that's an online thing. It's not terribly the most exciting committee meeting in Danvers, so if you skip it, it's okay. The Council on Aging will have its phenomenally interesting budget monthly meeting at 3 o'clock on Thursday. That's another one you wouldn't want to miss. However, the exciting one is the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee will have its monthly meeting it's a busy day on Thursday at 7 o'clock, and there are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things happening. I think that there are 2 new members of the committee. There is a new newsletter publication. I don't know if everybody has seen that, if that has come out and been published to the select members, but I got to tell you, what a crackerjack job it is, and it is a beautiful piece of work. Also, there will be planning for a committee event on Juneteenth, a day which appears to be becoming the national holiday for the celebration of indigenous people in the United States. And so we are working on that, and also planning for whatever event can take place to mark the beginning of Gay Pride Month nationally. Every June for the last 8 or 9 years, we have had a flag raising in front of the town hall and at the library, and for the last couple of years at the police station, and last year at the fire station, and at several of our schools, and the senior citizen center, and Essex Aggie. And so we will be planning that. Who knows how much energy is left when everybody is running now on online meetings and things rather than in person, but it will be a very healthy meeting on Thursday night, and that will not be boring if anybody would care to join. And Dan, may I make one, is it time that I could make one other thing? We got correspondence from the family that owns Rocco's Pizza. Did we ever address that publicly or acknowledge?
Not aware of it.
Huh.
I'm not aware of it either.
I didn't get it.
Well, I'm sorry about that. It seems everybody was copied on it. It was a March 2nd email from John Carlin concerning green space downtown.
Oh, yes.
It was sent to Aaron, and it was copied, I believe, to the members of the board.
It was.
And there was a follow-up email as well, in which, it could be Mrs. Kabuzzi, I'm not sure, was asking us to be particularly attentive to the parking problems that they encounter, being right on Maple Street and relying upon, public parking in front for their business. So I just didn't want them to think that we had not acknowledged receipt of that. I don't know what we can do about it except be mindful of the need of all of the businesses there to have some parking, and especially, somebody told me their mushroom cheesesteak was great. So about 2 weeks ago, I ordered one and went down there and tried to pick it up and park kind of in front of them. It was very, very difficult. I don't think I'll go back there, but it wasn't because of the food, All right, that's it from me.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you. Yes.
next, after the presentation was made before the board, Mr. Henry and Mr. Fields have been downtown walking and speaking to business owners about the concept, and they've requested to come back on April 6th and provide an update to the board.
Okay, good, thank you. Gardner?
Maureen and I continue to work on the making Danvers a welcoming town subcommittee, and they're wrapping up final draft of a presentation to come before the board shortly.
Thank you.
The River Committee is not going to be able to meet this month because of conflicts, but I want people to know that the issue with the gentleman who encroached on town property is being worked. He has taken down the fence on his property that encroached on the town property. And we did get a grant for the surveys, and we will be conducting those in hotspot locations. We'll use it as judiciously as we can. We'll decide which ones are the priority ones, which will probably garner future action. But it is being worked with the same level of gentleness that the town employs. It's not a heavy hand. We've worked with the person. He took down the fence of his own volition, and we'll work for further remediation there. There are some other sites, and that's about all for now until we're ready to have Chris come back and give us a report officially.
Very good, thank you.
Yep, that's it. I have no other correspondence or new business.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. I'll start with the easy one. A resident called today for the third time. Are we having band concerts at the library this summer? Do we have?
I'll check with staff tomorrow. I don't have an answer to that.
Right. Thank you.
I did reach out to Rec on that, and they said they have not yet made the decision.
That's what I told, there's no decision made, because
I got the same call.
obviously if there was a decision, we would have heard about it.
Yep.
But there is concern from those folks that enjoy those events.
Yep.
Thank you. Board members, the FinCom will be meeting on the budget and the warrants, the dates of April 12, 13, 15, 26, and 27. Typically, we split the dates up amongst us and take a date I don't need to know tonight, but certainly at our next meeting on the 6th, I'd like to know what your availability is. And I'll tell you right now, I am unavailable the 12th or the 13th.
What were those dates again, Dan?
12, 13, 15, 26, 27. It doesn't preclude other members from going, but would like somebody there to represent the board. It is our budget. So we can talk about that on the 6th. Last Friday, I attended an MMA webinar on civil discourse, and I actually found it the best webinar presented this year. Some of these webinars I get involved and all of a sudden it's not a good use of my time and I leave. You can just hit the button and leave. But this one I stayed and it ran over. They talked about boards, select boards, and the need to have written policies on certain items and to a community code of conduct, which we have, but I think we could expand it. Memos on holding members accountable, how to work together, the role of the chair, training for new members. We elected Maureen, they gave her a chair and a placard, and that was it, correct? And that's kind of my fault. I could have done more, but with COVID, we just weren't doing that. But it's important for new training, a piece on social media, how best to choose the chair, policy on holding public hearings. There's a lot of, those are the things that caught my attention. The MMA has a policy committee on personnel and labor relations, best practice recommendation, conduct of public officials, and it's 2 pages of items to be concerned, to discuss. Steve and I had talked a while back about having a retreat for the board at some point in time, and I suggested that, knowing that maybe Mr. Clark was not going to run, that we wait and see his decision so we have new board members. That would be something that we would do off-site in the summer, but I'm not adverse to sitting down as a group for a couple of hours in a special meeting to discuss some of these things and come back in May with recommendations to vote on. The other option is to do nothing. So I put it to the board what your thoughts are on how to proceed. I'd be happy to share the information that I have. They have some examples of code of conducts from Lexington, Holden, Carver, Littleton. So other boards have done this work that we could review. So that's what your thoughts are as a board. David?
I think it sounds very healthy, Dan. I also believe so often we can ask other communities if they've done something similar, and we can not only save ourselves a lot of work, but get a lot of creative genius from other people who've worked hard on these.
I have the copies from other communities for us to review, and the best thing in America is we always copy somebody.
Yeah.
So we have plenty of materials to look at. Just a matter of how and when.
Sounds good to me.
Bill, your thoughts?
I'm not going to be here, but it sounds good.
Well, you're still here if we do it immediately.
Dan, I think it's a great idea. We talked about that, remember?
Yep.
Having some kind of an off-site for us. Sounds
Gardner?
good.
Sounds good to me, too. Do you know if they recorded the MMA
It
session?
is. You can go on there. The webinar is available.
Thank you.
Just go to the site.
Okay.
They put it up Saturday, as a matter of fact. It's an hour and 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Jeff Nutting is the presenter. It's very well done.
If it's helpful, I can send out the materials Dan shared with me as well as a link to the
That'd be
webinar
great.
tomorrow, and then we can discuss.
That's kind of what I'd like to zero on, what the board's comfortable with it now rather than later. So that's something we'd like to,
I'm fine with it now.
I am too.
Me too.
But I think the Chatham Bar's in with a shore dinner, lobsters and steamers to make, okay, just a thought.
I think we gave Father Drynan a going away present from the Parents Club at the prep, and the Chatham Bar's Inn, I think, was $600 a night.
Oh, dear.
We were supposed to have our Salem Tide award there too, but it got canceled because of COVID. Yeah.
So Steve, send the materials out and poll the members on what's a good time.
Sure.
Um,
I would ask generally, is there a day of the week that would be more or less helpful, or you?
Well, I hear David's very busy on Thursday nights.
No, this month, this week, Dan, not every Thursday.
Okay. Kind of get a sense from the members. I know, Maureen, can you sneak away during the day?
Sure, yes.
I mean, I prefer to do it during the day, so we're all fresh,
Yeah, the only
lively.
thing is my son's gonna be having a baby soon, so I'm kind of on call, so.
Well, it's okay, you can,
Yeah.
if you get the call, you can leave
I
the
get the
meeting.
call, okay, I just wanna make full
Daytime's all
disclosure.
right if I get enough lead time, because I work full-time.
No, I know, I realize that.
We'll pull something together and shoot some
Yeah.
options out.
Okay.
I would like a staff member maybe to work with us, Steve, or not to put the onus on yourself, but,
No, I would probably do that, and, yeah,
okay, good.
we'll put some thought into this.
Okay, very good. All right. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Good night, Danvers.
Thank you.
Thank you.